North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Conference in Concord that was discussed heavily over there about lighting the buildings. So I'm just going to read a little bit out of a very similar handout I gave you guys this morning. This coming Veterans Day, the National Association of Counties and the National Association of County Veteran Service Officers have asked all counties, parishes, and boroughs throughout the United States to join Operation Greenlight in lighting to show support of our veterans by lighting buildings green from November 7th to November 13th. By shining a green light, county governments and our residents will let veterans know they are seen, appreciated, and supported. I think it's especially important at Veterans Day week. We have a lot going on that week. Also, remember we have Staff Sergeant George Perez, the Operation Homecoming House. I believe he's going to be getting the keys that week. We've got a Veterans Day program during a blood drive over here in the Commons area, and a lot of things going on. So, but I think it's very important, this Operation Greenlight. We've got the resolutions ready to go. We've already did some things on social media to kind of let everybody know, the citizens, that this is coming, what we're going to be doing. So we've got everything ready to do press releases and everything, just pending the resolution being signed. So I've got Kenneth Snipes with facilities back here. He's the guy's going to be making sure that our this building and the courthouse are lit during that time period. So any questions from any of you?
Do we have that resolution?
Yes, we have resolution. I have it. I think it was included in the packet.
Yeah, I believe it is in your packet. If
To look and make sure the resolution was included in the packet.
Do it. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Oops.
Okay.
Yeah, it was included in the packet.
Thank you.
If it please the board, we'll add this to the consent agenda for Monday night and approve this proclamation. All right. Thanks, sir.
all right, thank you.
All right. Mr. Matthews.
Good morning, Commissioners. This morning I'm here just to request permission to receive the Child Care Block Grant for the Child Care Resource and Referral Program. This is a recurring grant. We've been doing this for the past 28 years, and that grant just renews each year, and so we're just asking permission to receive that.
Any comments or questions about this? If no one objects, we will add this to the consent agenda for Monday night for approval.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. All right.
I'm handling it.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Mr. Rouse is out of town and not able to be here. On the first item, number 5, it is vaccination funds, which are a item that have been approved in the past through the COVID money, and it relates to anything related to COVID vaccinations, and that's what it can be utilized for. So this is establishing that.
Any objections to approval of this? Clerk, please add that to the consent agenda for Monday. Okay. Item 6.
Item 6. Now this one is a little bit different. I think it was mentioned to you in the past that we had some COVID funding that would be available for us to look into the potential of purchasing a mobile medical unit. We had some concern. We went out initially looking for a vendor that could provide a unit. The lead time necessary was well over a year. These funds need to be expended by May 31 of 2023, and so we weren't sure that we were going to be able to find a vendor that could meet the needs. Mr. House went through some exhaustive search, and he found a vendor that takes a chassis that is a normal recreational vehicle, and then they convert it. So this company will, upon our ordering, and if the board agrees, they have a unit that they will take and renovate for us into the type of facility, a mobile medical unit that we need. And so this is an opportunity for us to go ahead and utilize this funding. It will give us a great opportunity to have a unit that can go on site, do school vaccinations, to do any type of mobile type of assistance medically that we might find a need for within the county. So something that we weren't sure we were going to be able to do, we've now found a vendor that can help us out and meet the deadline of May 31st. So we request the board to go ahead and authorize us to be able to utilize the money to purchase a vehicle from Mission Mobile Medical, located in Greensboro.
Any questions or comments about this?
And this would be money that we would lose if we
Correct.
were not able to expend
Right.
it.
Exactly.
I'm fine.
I have a question. Would this pay for the mobile unit?
Say again?
Would this money completely pay for the mobile unit?
Yes, it will pay for all the expenses related to the mobile unit, and then there'll be some additional funds they'll use to purchase supplies to put into the unit.
Okay.
And this could be used in the case of a state of emergency or
Yes.
something?
Yes, if we had an emergency need based on a situation that occurred, especially you look at weather events, definitely.
That gives Harnett County 3 mobile medical units. Campbell's got 2.
I know, and this would be a great partnership as well if there were situations that occurred.
Absolutely. All right, well, hearing no objections, we'll add that to the consent agenda for Monday also. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Blevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this subject this morning. I acknowledge that, Mr. Chairman, that email you sent me, we did a memo, and Mr. Trout sent that out yesterday, so I don't know if you folks had an opportunity to review that concerning the application, but I'll go over some of those things this morning. So, as you're aware, Campo, the northwest part of Harnett County is in the Campo UZA. What I did was, seeing what was going on with Fayetteville, with $5307 being released, and the board sort of approving the MOU for us to move forward with to try that out. I thought, well, what's the opportunity for us to receive funds up in the northern part of the county, where I know its demand is going to increase. Additionally, since this area has been identified not just by Campo, but by Mid Carolina as a transit route from Angier to Fuquay. So this has already been planned for the future, and so I thought, what's the best way to get our hands on more money to build a better system in that area, which is going through a study. So I reached out to Campo and met with them on several occasions, and what we did was come up with a plan in order to access WP funds. To my surprise, actually, it ends up looking right now that it may be a regional project. In that case, the county doesn't make any match. However, if it ends up being a project, it's called non-core, a local project, then there's a 20% match. However, the thing about this submission is you submit the application essentially by email, and then you identify the players in the application, if you want to call it, and you identify the sort of criteria that you need to meet, all the ones that you listed in your email, by the way. And essentially what it is that Town of Angier is involved, wants to participate. We've not got any formal agreement yet. There's no agreement on the application. And the Lillington, we talked a little bit about it. We're not sure if they're going to be involved. However, the census indicates the anticipated census numbers will bring it closer to Lillington. So the UZA may be that close and would be involved. So also just thinking of the corridor from Angier to Fuquay, really the 401 study's underway. Campo thinks that this may actually be a part and another way to look at it instead of just a corridor. So it can expand quite a bit. And the end result of all this is that we may be if this is a successful study that shows there's going to be a demand, there is surveys done, the public's involved, all those things, if it shows that there's going to be a demand for it, we can begin planning towards that. But it may also release funds from Campo, actually Wake County, which has the 5307. However, there may be a possibility of it. The other thing is we may be available for additional funds to support that route, essentially. We think it's a good opportunity to look. If Campo chooses this application, we think it's a good opportunity to look and see what the real demand is and begin planning for it. Because we do believe that sooner or later, a fixed route up towards the UZA, up towards the Raleigh area, will come a reality. I failed to mention that I did reach out to Fuquay. They're undergoing a study now for transportation with their system to carry, and so we couldn't get involved in that one. They kind of shoved us off, but we are going to try to involve this, obviously, with them. The good thing about this is that if approved, if it's 100%, how we participating in this project is just by participation. Campo runs the RFPs, runs the consultants, manages those, and all we do is participate as a county, whether it's staff, development services. We partner with them as far as going forward and how we're going to do it. But essentially, all we're going to do is participating in steering committees, technical committees, and public engagement, which definitely our staff will be involved in it, but also development services, and hopefully, if the board approves us moving forward, that some of you all may be interested in serving. Because I really think it's not just to think of not just a corridor for Andrew, not just a 401 corridor, but an avenue for people in all of Harnett County to gain access to the systems, well-used systems for Go Raleigh, Go Triangle, and those other ones, Fuquay, Cary. They're all going to go, whatever their names are, and it's good for us to probably try to connect with those to get transportation. Is there any questions on the application itself? I realized this morning I was reading the agenda. When I said grant application, it's really a project application. They call it a grant, but we're requesting a project. And then how it falls out with Campo's steering committees, whether or not it's 100% or not, that is how it ends up. It may end up as a grant.
Any questions for Mr. Blevins about this matter? I would recommend that we submit a request for this study to see if we qualify. And just because there's still a question as to when this study would be done. If we get approved, it might be the end of next year before they start. That's still to be determined. I will say, before we go making a statement that Andrew's on board with this, we need to make sure their board, which has voted on it, which they have not at this time.
That's correct. That's correct. I have been in touch with I have been in touch with Jerry Vincent, who indicates he's sharing it with all the board members, but you're right, they haven't
So
voted.
they haven't seen it yet, Barry.
I'm
Okay.
sorry?
They have not seen it.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll add this to the consent agenda for Monday. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, Mr. Sykes, you want to talk about adding some roads to the state system?
Yes, sir. Good morning, board members. Yeah, just to touch briefly on the request from DOT for the resolution as they keep their momentum, which is great for us to see on a lot of these older roads that they take into their system. Melody Lane is one, out off of 87. It's a development that's been going on for a while. Kinlan Farms, you might remember several years ago during Hurricane Matthew, is one that had some flooding. So I think EMS had to actually go through there and rescue some folks out their way. So these are a lot of older subdivisions that continue to be added into the system, which is good on DOT as they go through their process and work with Ms. Capps and us and the board to move forward, which is always positive, because anything to the state system is good for you folks, I know, and us as well.
Any questions about this? Any objections to adding this to the consent agenda for approval? Madam Clerk, if you'll do that, please. All right, Mr. Locklear.
So we're doing the old tag team this morning. We are doing a revision to the planning board's bylaws, mostly to come in compliance with the 160D changes that the state changed probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. We had one of our interns take a look as one of the duties that we were looking for to look at our bylaws, and she found a couple of small, what I would call grammatical or changes that we needed to add from that legislation to the planning board's bylaws. A lot of it is stuff like adding planning board. That's a good part of it, is adding planning board, clarifying Harnett County Unified Development Ordinance, spelling that out. And then probably the biggest thing is some language that came out of that statute that said all planning board members must abstain from voting on an advisory or a legislative decision in which the outcome of the matter is reasonably likely to have direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact. So basically, if they have a financial interest in a case, then they need to abstain. Pretty basic knowledge for folks. Other than that, more planning board stuff, and as well as the chairman's name at the back of the bylaws. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Locklear, about this? All right, we don't have to, this doesn't require a public hearing, does it?
No, we couldn't find it required. It doesn't require. It does not.
Planning board's just obviously also advisory commission, so it just comes to us.
Okay.
Something we've been working on actually for about 6 months, but we had to have full-time members to be
Yeah, we were
present. And
Yeah.
we usually have alternates that have been sitting in, so last month we finally had all 5 regulars, so we were able to
amend the bylaws. And I neglected to mention that too. It was approved by the planning board 5-0, unanimously approved by them. So you can put it on consent agenda if everybody feels comfortable with that.
All right, if that being the case, if there's no objections, no public hearing required, we'll add it to the consent agenda for approval. All right, who wants to talk about zoning changes?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'm going to quickly mention, I apologize, Melissa, I should have sent this to you as well, but I will, just for the record. A case plan 2206-005 was tabled back in August. It was a land use amendment. The applicants came forth. It was out on NC 27 across from Western Harnett. They have pulled that application. They are going to go forward just a regular subdivision. So they pulled the amendment, which is good. However, they did just want me to let y'all know that in quotes, the commissioners expressed a willingness to work with the applicant by tabling the action on the land use amendment and permitting the application to go further define the scope and the impact of the project and may have in the surrounding areas. The degree of the cooperation was duly noted and appreciated. However, the applicant noted that commissioners also had concerns about the impact of the development. In an effort to work toward mutually beneficial relationship, the application has been pulled out of respect for those concerns. And additionally, the applicant will work with the county for resolve critical infrastructure development issues as they move forward. So they want to know they appreciate y'all's thoughts and just for hearing the application. And they did heed your concerns. They're working with DOT, planning, utilities, and so forth. Sorry for that little side note there. All right, moving into our current items that will be coming up next week. We have a request to rezone a portion of property from RA 40 to RA 30. This is in the Black River Township, right at Clibbert Springs Road in Purefoy. It's just down the road from actually 2 miles away from the town of Anger. There's a lot of annexations, satellite annexations from the town of Anger. This is also adjacent to Drake's Landing. The owners, Clivet Properties, it's been in the family for many years. It's a total of 135 acres. It's only 113 that's being rezoned to RA30. Portion of it is already RA30. That's across the road. And there's about 15 and a half acres that's conservation, and it will remain. There's a lot of RA30 in the area. The application worked pretty diligently with staff and the consultant back during the Northwest land use plan, small area land use plan, to ensure that their little area, this area right here was classified as medium density, because they knew they would want to move forward. As you can see there on that map, the back end is Neals Creek, so that's where the main sewer line is. There's a lot of floodplain back there, a lot of topography. It actually goes down valleys pretty steep there, and then flattens out and then goes back up. So it's a very natural buffer between Drake's Landing that they will keep. They will use water and sewer if and when they move forward. They do not have any immediate plans to develop it as the owners, I would say. Per the application, if you can see, there's kind of a cleared area that's been farmed, and that's kind of their intent, is just to keep it developed in the middle there, and then have a perimeter of existing buffering. Planning board did recommend approval, 5-0. No one spoke in opposition. There were several folks in attendance, and staff recommend approval as well, based off of existing residential uses in the area, as well as the land use plan.
Are they planning to, I'm guessing they're planning to develop this?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It would be residential in nature. Yeah.
Are they well aware that they're building a subdivision next to Drake's Landing where there's a lot of gunfire?
Yes, sir, they are. Yeah. And
I don't want somebody in here complaining about the noise.
yes, sir.
Drake's Landing's there.
Yep.
There's not a subdivision there. So
That's
if you
right.
build a house there, get you some earplugs is all I can tell you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we'll. And actually, if you noticed on the land use map, it says a dot, Drake's Landing. That's actually on the in the plan. The Drake's Landing owners wanted to make sure that, hey, we want this on the map, for public disclosure. And they know they reached out to the owners.
He's had enough trouble. See, I don't blame him.
But you're right, yes, sir. We will do everything to know on future developments. Who knows? 10 years down the road, if someone moves in, of course, we hope that the realtors in the area will also help disclose such information. But we will do everything in our power to put that on the maps, and then also maybe request that it go into the deeds. Sometimes folks think they move into the town of Clivet Springs, when they move into this area. So it's a big, it's always a big informational process.
Yes, ma'am.
It is already a highly congested area for housing and all. And you said that you hope that contractors and all will disclose all the information. It's not up for them. It's up to you all to disclose all the information that's needed for these people that when they build these houses. Because it's not a good area. I know it. I know it really well. And I certainly wouldn't want to live beside Drake's Landing with all this firearms and all this stuff going. It's sort of a dangerous situation. But the citizens that buy those houses, they're the ones that have to make the decision.
Right.
But I want to make sure that they have adequate information on what's going on here.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's one thing I really want to stress, because it puts us sitting up here on this board. I don't want to see this room packed with people arguing with us about this construction, and after they get in there, these homes and what's surrounding the surrounding area. So I do think you all have some responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I agree. And And like I said, when people move in 10 years from now, that they may not know that. So we're doing everything we can. Unfortunately, in North Carolina, as you know, it's a buyer beware state. But you're right. We've reached out to the applicant. They reached out, to adjacent landowners, and they understand as well. That's why it was kind of we were glad to see that Drake's Landing wanted that to be represented on our county maps, which was good. So that kind of helps out as well. So every little thing possible, we will definitely try and do.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I know what it feels like
Yes, ma'am.
to buy a home
Yeah.
and set up your lifestyle there in that area. And then years from there, from the time you buy it, stuff come around you that affect your health and all of that. So in this case, it's more or less safety. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Jay, from planning's perspective, this is to you and Mark, in the last year with all the problems we've had before, in the last year, would you say you've had any complaints as far as how their operating hours and other things that they're doing now?
I don't know.
We haven't had
Any.
any complaints.
I have.
And I hate that we say that because we might have one tomorrow. But we were just talking the other day how we've actually increased the number of folks living in the area, because obviously we've been growing like that tomorrow, but the complaints have went away. I think that project, Drake's Landing, finally going through the process, getting their conditional use, and getting the approval with the constraints that the Board of Adjustment added to the project. I think it kind of helped to put people in the know. And just to add for this specific one, this project was highly debated when we did the Northwest study for this particular area. So people who own this property, they understood that they wanted to grow, as well as Drake's Landing understood that they wanted to, that they wanted to make it known that, hey, we're here and we're not going anywhere. So I think as far as all the sides are aware of what's in place, it certainly is. But no, to answer your question, we have received very little. And Drake's Landing, I'll say this, they've done a really good job at doing all the things that they are supposed to do on their end too.
Is Neal's Creek's RA40 or RA30?
It is 40, you mean along the corridor there, heading up towards Nils Creek?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, it's 40 north of, what is that? Is that Rawls Church Road there? Yeah, so in between Nils Creek and Pure Foy, it's mostly 40, and then opposite side of the creek is 30, and then heading back towards Andrews 30. So it's that little corridor right there between the creek and that one road.
And I would remind everybody, the board, that this is a compatibility, what we call in the land use plan, compatibility growth target area. Because we have that big sewer line that runs up Nils Creek, so you're going to see a lot of growth, and this is where the leadership at the time when that plan was developed, that's where we said we want to grow. So it is in that area. So that's the reason why we are required to support these zoning changes when they come through, if it makes sense.
Are we gonna be providing the water and the sewer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
This project backs up to the sewer line.
Okay. Just wanna know.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll put it on the agenda for a public hearing on Monday night then.
Yes, sir. Okay, our next item is also a rezoning. It was a request to rezone approximately 94 acres from commercial to RA30 in Upper Little River Township, out near Old 421 and 421 intersection, heading towards Sanford, Lee County. It's predominantly right now used for this vacant farmland. Public water is in the area. Public sewer is not in the area. There's a lot of RA30 in the area, and there's over 188 acres of existing commercial in the area. Most of the existing commercially zoned property is commercial. Existing commercial uses are smaller ones, manufactured home sales, a tire shop, and little neighborhood convenience type stuff. In the area, it's predominantly agricultural and rural residential. There is a development node in this vicinity. Of course, on the land use classifications, these are much more of a higher view. It is not directly over the intersection, but a portion of this property does dip into the development node. This was a tricky one for staff. Staff looked at it because there was not, because of the existing commercial, because the way that Lee County is growing and the way that this is, as noted by economic development, it's directly in the middle of Sanford, Lee County's commercial stuff, and then Lillington's. So it's about 11 miles in between. So could be a perfect location for future growth. Could support something like a grocery store type development shopping area. So staff looked at that, working with economic development. We voted, or we recommend denial of this request to preserve this commercial due to the future growth that way. October 3rd, of course, the planning board voted unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of the application. That was due to the immediate residential tax base that would occur, as well as the immediate lack and planned of public sewer that would support the non-residential project. Planning board members discussed the response in a rural area, internal street connections. The main topic consisted of no new non-residential activity in this area for a while, as well as the lack of public sewer, which is typically vital for a larger non-residential development. The applicant was represented by legal counsel, whom discussed points pertaining to the majority of the area being residentially zoned, as well as public sewer not being available, and it is not proposed to come to the area. Two citizens did speak in opposition of the request, stating one had overall concerns with development in this rural area, including traffic safety concerns. The other one was the farmer who leases the land wanted to preserve the farmland and protect his livelihood as a farmer. Staff looked at the overall preservation of the commercial, as well as working with economic development, and suggested denial based off of existing non-residential parcels, as well as future economic development opportunities.
I would add to that also, like Jay said, this was a little tricky for us from a staff standpoint when we were looking at it, because we do need, we are aware of the commercial need in this county and the residential things that we're getting. We initially spoke with the applicant about maybe reserving a portion of the property as commercial and maybe rezoning the rest, and we might could support that a little bit more, because it made more sense up around that area at the top of the property to maybe keep that commercial and maybe give us an opportunity if something were to come along to capture some commercial development. They didn't respond. They didn't say no, but they never responded, period, back to that. And I know that we spoke with them twice to make that known. They were represented by legal counsel at the planning board. He done a really good job at going through and looking at the findings of facts and pointing out some of the issues that we may have on the property. So he was very convincing to the planning board as far as being able to get the property moved over. The planning board felt like, since we don't have sewer ran out to that area currently, that we're not making an effort to make it commercial or make it more viable for big, large-scale commercial development. And so they sided with the applicant in this case. But I just wanted to make it known to the board that we had suggested the idea of keeping some of the property commercial and then maybe developing the rest of it as residential. But that was obviously not the case at the meeting. So that's the only thing I want to add to that. We're available for any questions too.
Any questions for staff concerning this recommendation?
Yes, Mark, let me kind of follow up on that. Did I understand that concern of the planning board was that we don't have the infrastructure there to support the commercial?
That's what was one of the comments that they made.
But we don't have the infrastructure that's commercial or residential.
Well,
Other
residential
than water,
could go septic, but
yeah, they'd have to go septic.
This is right outside of Littleton, right? The old 421 up there where the old feed mill used to be.
Where old 420, yes, ma'am, where old
I know
421 comes into
exactly where it's at.
421.
And we don't have the infrastructure to make any of that commercial.
Water,
We
we
got
have water available, but we don't have sewer.
And we
Right?
had a big project, in the last 2-3 years, I believe it was, where we, yeah,
Yes, sir, it was. Big water project.
yeah.
I mean, we lean heavily on economic development's comments back to us, who basically said, yeah, hey, we need all the commercial we can get. And so we sided on that side of it from staff standpoint. There is a portion of it, as Jay mentioned, that's in a rural development node, which is obviously more geared for a mix of commercial and residential. And that kind of lended, that's why we kind of went to the, hey, why don't we reserve a portion at the top of it in that area? So that's kind of what we were thinking as far as.
I think it was a good, I think you were thinking in the right direction. I think you're thinking in the right direction there, because I see that as right outside of town of Littleton. And as you say, we need every bit of commercial we can get here in this area. It's just a small area.
I mean, and the other side of that too, I mean, if you think about it, you've got some commercial kind of service-based type stuff sitting up there. If you had some houses in the back, it might entice some more commercial to come to the area. So like I said, having a hybrid between the two might be a good compromise between the two, but, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I could agree with keeping commercial right along old 421/421 and build houses behind it. I could do that, but this is definitely, a good opportunity to preserve some commercial land. Go back to that last map, please. One more. Now, the land on the same side as Holly Springs Church Road, that's not part of this. Is that part of this rezoning?
No, sir. Yeah,
Okay, I didn't think so.
Large,
Just a large tract.
Bullseye over. See there.
You might could go back to just one of the earlier slides that made, there you go.
There.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Just
shows you
the blue around there is where the
Right.
property in question.
Should we go ahead and schedule the public hearing, or should we send it back to the developer and ask him to consider commercial on the front with residential behind it?
Well, I think at this point, we probably need to go through the process, and maybe that's a suggestion that you can make at the meeting on Monday night, as a consideration. I mean, like I said, you never know. You could get here and they make a good argument. I mean, that's why we have to go through that portion of it, make a good argument to make it all residential, so.
If you'd like us to relay a message.
Yeah, we'll relay that message again.
I can't speak for the rest of the board.
Right, yeah, that's.
I'm just saying what I'm thinking.
This is just, we're just technically in a work session, so we're just throwing stuff around.
I
Right,
agree
the work
with that.
session for that reason.
I agree in preserving some of the commercial.
What do you think?
I don't have a problem with him relaying the message. We don't know how it's going to turn out, but yeah, I think you should.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
yeah, I still don't, I guess I still am undecided in looking at this. How much more commercial property do we, or how much more land do we have zoned commercial up that 421 corridor toward Lee County?
Toward Lee County, it would just be, there's a store around the Seminole area and a mini stores, I think. This is definitely the biggest swath along all of 421. Back towards Boone Trail, there's Dollar General and a fire station, old medical. I mean, I would say either way, it's less than 10 acres. This would be, so this is total of 188. This is about 94 of the 188. If you're looking at
And I will say this in their defense, too, this isn't zoned industrial. So it's zoned commercial, you know, and you can have a large, like Jay said, shopping center, some type of situation go on a commercial track. But, you know, if you look at the two different types of uses, light industrial, more of a, you know, this is a large piece of property. It could be conducive to a plant or distribution center or something like that, but it's not zoned technically for that.
Yeah, and I guess
Just
that's
depending on what it came up.
my question. Yeah, so the point I'm having trouble getting to goes back to my earlier question about us not having sewer capacity there to support true commercial development.
Right, a large scale.
Right, large scale, true commercial development. And so, and hence my question, how much more do we have along that corridor that's commercial? We don't have much. We're you know, it'd be cost prohibitive to run that. So that's kind of where my thoughts are right now.
Right. I mean, I would describe development nodes, and you've seen those on our land use map. That's kind of how this corridor is. This is like a development. This is an area, development node area, that where there's some existing stuff.
This land is what? Between 5 and 10 miles outside of Broadway? Or is it that far?
It's, yeah, I would say 5 or less from Broadway, right? And then
'Cause it's
another 5 into Sanford.
And the store, I think, in Seminole, which is in there, is actually part of Broadway. It's actually if my memory serves me correct.
BP or whatever it is?
Yeah, I know, a long time ago, I think it was, they did a voluntary annexation into Broadway, I think for, I don't know, I don't want to guess, but maybe alcohol sales, but I'm not 100% on that.
Have we heard any comments from anybody in Broadway about this?
No, SJ, we had some, do we have anybody in opposition?
We had a local resident in the farmers opposition to keep it in an unused use, which is obviously, even though it's commercial, it's under present use value of farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's being used for farming currently.
I see it as good commercial land. All right, well, we will schedule this for public hearing on Monday. Go from there. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about EMS Premium Pay. She looks a whole lot better than you.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Allie Faust, and I am the lead for NC Fellow with Harnett County, as you all know. So also, as you all know, our county was awarded $26.4 million in ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act. And this past April, you all approved an ARPA funding plan, which included providing premium pay to our county EMS workers. So I've worked with Chris Appel, Kimberly Honeycutt, Larry Smith, and Janice Lane to create this policy, which will allow us to move forward with providing premium pay to our full-time EMS staff. So the funding is intended to recompense EMS staff for the extra risks they've incurred throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's also intended to assist with employee retention with EMS workers. So the total funding used to provide COVID-19 premium pay will depend on the number of EMS workers during each time frame, but shall not exceed $560,000 total. There will be 4 premium payouts, the first in December of this year, then in June 2023, and then one in December of 2023, and the final payout will be in June of 2024. So each full-time EMS worker employed for the entire duration of the 6-month time frame leading up to each payout will receive an extra $1,750 with their paycheck, as demonstrated on the schedules, which is on the policy and the memo before you. So just to point out, there is one correction that needs to be made to the policy that you all have before you today due to an administrative error. We just need to change the first time frame to begin on, oh, I'm sorry. I thought I did, I sent the wrong draft, the PDF. Sorry, all the comments are in there. You didn't need all the comments. Anyway, so the first time frame should begin on June 1st of this year, not July 1st. And this change has already been made and will be reflected next time you see the document. But that's it, the only change. So the county manager's office asks that the board approves this policy to allow us to provide premium pay to the EMS workers who have been working on the front lines during the pandemic. And we are happy to answer any questions you may have about this policy.
Any questions about this policy?
So the workers that would qualify for this would be the ones that were with us working during COVID pandemic time.
Good question. So this is just looking at, so for this time frame, any full-time EMS employee with Harnett County starting June 1st of this year through December of this year, basically, or December 1st. So it's, unfortunately, it's too much to go back into the actual 2020.
So if I'm a new employee on June 1st of 2022, then I would be eligible to receive this if as of December 1st, 2000.
Mm-hmm. Yep, as long as you stick around through December 1st. And so if someone were to start today, then they wouldn't be eligible for this time frame, but if they are employed from December 1st through June 1st of next year, then they would be eligible for the next time frame. But we can't have someone come in 2 weeks before and then get the premium pay for that full 6-month period.
So you have to be employed 6 months prior to, okay.
Correct. I know it's a little confusing, but the policy, hopefully the breakdown on the policy might give a little more detail.
Somebody that's been employed for a couple of years, if they stay here through June 1st of 24, they get all 4 of these payouts.
Correct.
This is not something we're going to have to budget to continue after we spend the ARPA money, is it?
No, this is intended to provide relief right now as we continue to go forward over the next 2 years. It will provide us relief and encourage individuals to stay with us. As much as we are getting closer to the end of talking repetitively about the pandemic, we still are feeling the impacts as it comes to staffing and getting individuals to stay in this profession. So doing this allows us the next 2 years to keep individuals interested in being here and continue to work in the profession in general and to continue to support our citizens.
Questions, comments?
That last comment helps me because we're talking about losing these folks to other professions.
Yep.
Not necessarily losing them, although we are, but not specifically to losing them to another county or another EMS organization.
Go ahead, I know you got something.
No, I don't have anything to say simply because the COVID is not gone. It's still here. And if we can keep people on the job to help save people's lives, I don't have anything to say about that.
Well, if everybody's in agreement, we'll put the approval on the consent agenda for Monday night then.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Appel.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm going to go over the general terms of this lease. And I know in the agenda we put the hangar lease with Monroe Lee. The official name will be in the name of Lenora Johnson Holding Company Incorporated, but the individual owns that company is Monroe Lee. Now, this hangar was purchased by Lenore Johnson Holding Company a few years ago. It was purchased from Warren Investments. Obviously, as that company was winding down, we were taking over to the FBO at the airport. This hangar was sold to this individual. And so I've been working to develop a new lease with this individual and trying to use a new standard lease that we're hoping to use for the airport out there for all future hangars and current hangars. But this one is located at 559 Airport Road. So if you were on the apron of the airport looking at our terminal, it's the group of hangars on the right. It's the third one. So you got those three hangars. I believe it's about 80 by 80, but it's that third one on the right to the of the terminal. So the general terms of this lease, it's going to be an initial 10-year term that's backdated to February 3rd of 2020. So we'll already be in for a few years upon approval. After that initial 10-year term, the lessee would have the option to renew for 5-year renewal terms for a maximum of 5 renewals. So, five-year renewal terms for a total of 35 years going back to 2020. So that's the time frame, which is good. That fits within the FAA's standard lease that they're looking for these types of hangars, which is around 30 to 35 years. So this fits within the FAA goal of an appropriate term. Just a couple other points to hit on. So the rent will be $2,192 to begin with for the first 5 years. Obviously, ground leases are not very expensive. I think current under the old owner, it was about $1,400, so it is going up. But I understand this is ground leases are never too expensive. But after the 5th year, it will increase the lesser of 3% or the consumer price index at that time, and that will occur every 5 years. And we do have other provisions in here. One, to be compliant with the FAA provisions, so to make it subordinate to our FAA obligations, grant assurances, exclusive rights, non-discrimination, environmental, and so on. So that's been the key in developing new leases for the hangars out there, is putting in these necessary FAA provisions that we need to put in there. Also put in provision that as this airport grows and as the master plan takes hold, or any future changes to that, there can be a relocation if the future growth of the airport requires it, and can settle on a new location during the term if we ever have to move this hangar. Don't believe that's the plan right now for these hangars, but again, want to put these provisions in our new leases to make sure that we can move these things around as we grow at this airport. We did put in there, agree that at the end of the term, they would have the right to remove their improvements outside of the pad itself. I don't know if that happened at the end of this term. If he goes the full 35 years, the hangar will be about 50 years old at that point. So that may be the end of life at that point. But it all depends on how well it's kept up. And obviously they have to, per our rules, have to keep it up and keep it looking good. And I have no doubt that Mr. Lee will do that. Otherwise, I think that's, and then again, in typical fashion, the lessee's responsible for utilities, upkeep, and so on. So they're responsible for all the cost. That's the kind of general provisions of this lease. Happy to answer any other questions, but I'm happy we're moving forward with getting one of these hangars under a good lease.
Any comments from the board?
Yeah, I did have one question, but I think you answered it, Chris. So that hangar is about 15 years old now.
Yeah. So yes, with the total term that he's going to get, it will make it about 50 years old if they go the full length of the term, which again is okay. Again, FAA is okay with full lease terms up to 50 years for an entire hangar, but what they like seeing for an individual is 30, 35. That way they can recoup their investment that they bought the hangar for. So.
Okay.
If Mr. Lee or the investment company, if they decide they want to sell this during the term of this lease, do we have first right of refusal?
Yes, we have a right to be able to purchase it, and then we can also consent to any transfer of the lease as well. And as of right now, so I actually just spoke to Mr. Lee's attorney yesterday. He is signing the lease. I don't have a copy of the signed lease back, but I wanted to go ahead and present to you because I wanted to go ahead and get this moving forward. So if there's no issue with this lease, as soon as I receive a signed copy, I would put it on a consent agenda to have you execute it. And I'm hoping that'll be real soon.
Is everybody agreeable with that? That once we get the signed lease back, we put it on the consent agenda? Do you think we'll have it before Monday?
I was told he was signing it yesterday, so it's a matter of when he sends it. So it's possible.
Okay.
If we get it back, I'll be happy to put it on there. And also, whenever it does get on consent, it will reflect. It's going to say Lenore Johnson Holding Company Incorporated. So when you see that, that's the Monroe Lee lease.
All right. Anything else about this lease for the county?
Well, not specifically about this one, other than thank you for working on this. So am I to assume, or can I assume that we're making progress on the other leases out there or non-leases that are not FAA compliant?
We are.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that, I won't get into all the details. I know a lot of the talk out there has been, I want to wait to see what someone else does.
Uh-huh.
I finally have someone who's done it. So I'm hoping that will potentially, just move on.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the discussion of the animal control ordinance then.
Okay. So as you're aware, we're going through all these changes with the animal services ordinance. I think in our discussion last time, we're down to the adoption section. So I'm not going to go back over all the changes we discussed. We've done that. This was just to get more information regarding spay and neutering and whether to require that as a part of adoption. So Larry has done a great job of reviewing this to put some numbers together and also potential plans moving forward if we ever do have a spay and neuter program. So I'm actually going to ask him to come up because he can talk more thoroughly because he said he did a good bit of research on this to go over all the numbers of what it cost and what the cost would, if we require what the cost would do to the overall adoption.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. Initially, I reviewed the internal spay and neuter, which I'm a supporter of spay and neuter overall. I went through some figures with a 25% reduction based off of juvenile animals and free spay and neuter that we receive for canines, and it's $499,604. That's what it would cost just for dogs. That includes that daily housing rate, the additional 7 days we'd have to hold them internally for observation, transport. We'd have to take them off food for a day and medication because we don't want to give an animal to a citizen that's going to have an initial reaction to surgery or something like that. For felines, it's $183,255.49. That's a 52% reduction. That's included in that price because we have a new partnership with a couple of rescues that do free spay and neuter for us. So that's significantly reduced the cost in there. And that's for an external program that we run, we transport everywhere. And this doesn't include the additional staff that's probably going to be needed, probably 2 full-timers to run it and also coordinate with all the veterinarians because we will not be able to do all the spay and neuter in county because we cannot overload, the vets. So we'd have to go to Sandhills Clinic, the Fayetteville Clinic, and we'd probably need an additional vehicle as well to transport because we have an older van now and I give it a couple of years before it's completely deadlined. What we thought of, which would truly work, it places a little bit more on the adopter. It's called foster to adopt. We have the option in our system to foster an animal to a potential adopter. It's still legally our property. And so we schedule an appointment while they're doing the foster process. They take the animal with them, reducing the stay, reducing the cost. They go to the appointment, they get it done, we pay for it, and that they've already paid for that service while they took the animal with whatever price we decide what it's going to be. And that will reduce our cost $204,695 overall. That's including the daily kenneling and the transporting, because we haven't even accounted for the fuel and all that as well. And staff and I agree that's probably the best way to move forward. We've had volunteers come forward to transport for us, but we can't rely on volunteers to run a program because things come up or they just decide to stop doing it. Does anybody have any questions so far?
So in that second option you mentioned, would that potentially take away the need for additional transportation, additional staff?
Yes.
Or is that still, okay, it would?
Yes, because we would still do a couple of spay and neuters ourselves. We'd take them to vets. Highly breedable animals, purebred shepherds, lap dogs, things like that. We get done immediately because if they don't get done immediately, people will take them and they breed them. It's a thing that we see consistently.
So, with those numbers, so if we again, require spay and neuter for all adoptions, if you did it internally where we're transporting to a vet and holding it for the 7 days as Larry's talking about, and we pass that cost on as part of the adoption, well, currently it's $45 for cats, $55 for dogs. If we did this program internally where we transport, you're looking then the adoption cost going to about $470 for a dog, $390 for cats.
So essentially what we would do in that case is severely reduce the number of adoptions we would have.
So
and
that-
therefore, we're
Yes, sir.
probably going to have higher.
Higher euthanasia rates,
Yep.
yes, sir.
That is going to be the case, and I'll go over the numbers with euthanasia, talking to Larry about that, is right now we're about 22% euthanasia rate.
It's about average.
So that will go up. Euthanasia is $20 for the medicine, and it takes 2 staff to do the procedure at about 20 minutes, and then the cost of going to the landfill. So there will be an increased cost on that side too if we require it. Now, going the opposite end with Larry's idea of this foster to adoption, that will remove the kind of 7-day stay, which is about $133. So subtract that from the $470 and the $390. So again, still an increase from our current adoption, our cost. And then talking about, you said about 4 times a year we do clear to shelter events.
At a minimum 4 times, we asked Mr. Trout to waive the adoption fees besides $18 for the rabies shot and the microchip because we are full. And there's not a lot of adopters, but the economy, people going back to work, our adoption rates have dropped, but our rescue rates have increased. And that's another rabbit hole we're going to have to go down with rescues. Are we going to charge rescues? Which I believe we should since we're paying for a service, but their argument's going to be, well, rescues, we do it anyway. And they receive funding to pay for spay and neuter once they receive the animal from us. It's just a difficult thing to design this type of program.
So I think at the end of the day is, again, leaving up to the board whether we require spay and neutering in our ordinance. As of right now, that's not a requirement that was removed a while ago. So with the current ordinance, we don't require it. Now, I did not put it as a requirement in here. I know a lot of public comments where they want that. So, but all these numbers give you an idea of, yes, obviously the cost of adoption is going to go up. There is going to be no matter what, it will cost Larry some more money, whether it's euthanasia or even the foster. If we did the foster to adopt, there's going to be a situation where those foster they change their mind. They're not going to adopt it. They're going to return it. So we eat the cost of that spayed and neutering. So there would be a hit to the budget on that. So just want to give you all the facts and figures here today of what a requirement for spay and neutering for adoption looks like from a dollar and cents perspective. So I know it's your goal, it's Animal Services' goal to do this, and I know it's part of the future plan as you look at the new shelter, building a new shelter out there with the facilities to be able to handle spay and neutering.
And that's truly where I think it would be successful with the new facility, with the veterinary room, to hire a part-time vet. It would make more sense because we could get more animals done internally, and the cost would be significantly less to the citizen.
And you may have, I may have missed this, but in that second program that you were looking at, the fostering program, so then what would that put the cost of adoption at?
So I think we're talking about where if the internal is $470, and that would include having to house it for at least 7 days, and having to house it for about 7 days is $133.77. So you subtract that.
Still in $337
for canine, $257 for felines.
So that, again, going from 55 to about 337 for that. So again, it's a great idea. We're not opposed to it. We love the idea of spay and neutering, but it's just not. We're increasing adoption costs at from the current rate of $55. So again, just putting all those facts and figures to you now, whether you want to require it now can do that, leave it alone, wait and see what we do with the new shelter, wait more facilities, and look at the funding of that. So just want to give you all the information here today.
What is the average time that an animal stays in the shelter, either being before adopted or either euthanized or?
About 9 days is
9
our current
days.
length of stay.
And what is the cost per?
$20 per day.
$20 per day, so that's $180. So, I mean, either you're gonna keep having the same problems and repeat bringing in 5 dogs and to deal with that, or you stop the hemorrhage where it's at. So, I mean,
And I agree.
and
agree
I
with
also like to say, I mean, having a pet is a responsibility, all right? And if you can't go out there and put up, some money, then how are you actually going to adequately take care of that pet, all right? And then we're going to see this pet back and be in the same predicament again, or more, with more puppies and kittens and whatnot.
I agree with you. I think the owners need to take more responsibility instead of depending on the government to do it for them.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Bottom line, how is this gonna affect our budget then?
Right.
That's the bottom line.
I think that's going to be kind of a question because it depends on how we do this. So if we just do it internally and transport these animals, obviously there's that cost of travel, sending in an employee, cost of gas, the vehicle, and so on. So you have all that kind of cost. And if you do the foster, that helps alleviate some of the costs. But again, inevitably there's going to be some returns. But have no idea what that's going to be. And then euthanasia rate inevitably will go up. I mean, it's just. I agree with you, Commissioner Nickel, that the cost of taking care of pets can be way more than $470 over the course of their life. But I think it's just being realistic that adoption rates will go down, so euthanasia will increase, so there's going to be more cost for euthanasia. So I think it's hard to put a number on the hit to the budget. I mean, if you have an
Just a baseline from quick statistics I did, you're looking at about $480,000 for foster to adopt.
Yeah.
And that's the cheaper version, and add $205,000 to that if you want to do the transport to local veterinarians.
So the idea would be to recoup that in the adoption cost, but obviously we're going to eat some of that cost depending on how this goes.
And I anticipate our euthanasia rates with that cost, they're probably going to increase at least 20%.
Another
That's a lot of
question.
money. Yes, ma'am.
We're already having problems with housing these pets, these dogs and cats that I was selling out. How will making a change affect it? How would it making a change? How would it affect the housing problem that we have with these pets?
Be honest, Mr. Quay, I really don't know how that's going to affect that.
You don't know how it's going to affect?
I don't.
Because if you put stipulations on the people that are adopting these dogs, you may end up having more pets there and more cats or dogs there in the facility than you normally have. So you got to take that into consideration too.
And that's where
We are tight with space there. That's for
Yes,
sure.
ma'am.
We want to build another facility, but that's going to take some time.
Right.
And then too, you got to take under consideration of how much stress it's going to put on your staff.
And I agree, with all the new housing, we've already seen an increase in intake numbers, and we're a dumping ground.
That's
Because
true.
we have rural areas near the Wake, Johnston, and Cumberland border, we pick up animals out there all the time, and that's not accounting for the citizen portion that we use this data for. They said 2.5 animals per certain amount of households is where we got this data from, but we can't account for just dropped off animals, and that's what really hurts our figures in this, in this data.
So what do you see as like the main reason for the abundance of animals that we have? I mean, is spay and neuter, one of
It could be spay and neuter, the ruralness of the county, because there's feral animals everywhere. People just let animals go and they just start breeding on plots of land and they start getting pushed out when they develop.
Because, I mean, obviously it's a problem. So we're trying to figure out the best avenue of approach in order to solve this problem. Hopefully the least invasive to our pocketbook as well. But I mean, where is the pain with the pleasure, and like where exactly is the need coming from, and what do we need to focus on? I mean, if spay and neutering is what got us into this problem, I mean, lack of, then I say we address that. If that really isn't going to make, the biggest difference, well, then we need to figure out exactly what the issue is and then tackle that. And I
Spay
mean,
and neuter.
start somewhere.
Spay and neuter would definitely make a difference from the shelter standpoint because we know we're releasing animals that are going to get sterilized. So we know that will reduce the population, but we cannot enforce spay and neuter everywhere else. And I think that's truly where it is, where spay and neutering privately owned animals, which we can't enforce that.
Remind me, when are we expecting the study back that we've commissioned for the suggestions for the animal shelter?
Larry and I actually just spoke with SPOA yesterday, so we got a draft back, and we are looking at some numbers. What we plan to do is to share, and talk about the numbers, the size of the buildings, all those things. And what we're planning to do is to actually bring it to the board for your approval, because that'll bring up the next step, which is the actual the drawings and the site plans.
So estimated time frame?
So our gentleman's not available this week, so next week we'll be making those changes for
So
him.
in the next few months, anyway.
It'll be, I would say, yeah, you'll see it in November.
Okay. And that helps too, I think. And to Commissioner Nichol and Commissioner Weatherspoon's point, I understand that, we got to start somewhere. And but what we also need to understand is at increasing adoption costs to $400 or $300 and something over what it is now, that's drawing a line in the sand, because our euthanasia rates will go up because people are not going to drop $400 and something to adopt an animal that when they are used to paying $55 or whatever those numbers were, and that don't hold me to us being exact, but if we draw that line in the sand today, we need to be ready for the outcry that's going to come when euthanasia rates go up out the roof. My suggestion would be that if we need to go ahead and adopt this, that we adopt this without the spay and neuter language or requirement. Once we have a look at this study and see where we're going down in the future, then we can revisit this when we reach a point where we could handle this in a manner that would be mainly internally and cost a lot less money, and that way not cause adoption rates to go out the roof, so to speak. So that's just my thoughts.
I agree with you. If we increase the cost for the spay and neuter, the population in that shelter is going to skyrocket. And then we're going to get a public outcry about that.
Right, and I agree that we need to get there. I just don't know that we can get there today.
I agree with you.
With those kind of numbers that I just heard.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
I would say, I mean, not trying to come off insensitive in any way, but I mean, we're talking about this. We're trying to help curb the pet population, right? I mean, it's overpopulated. We can all agree on that, right? All the way around. So how exactly do you fix that? I mean, you send out a pet that has the ability to have 3, 4, 5 other, babies, offspring, that those people who adopted a dog who, for $55, and now they have 6 dogs. Now we have 5 more back in the shelter. So we're handing out 1 just to get 5 back, okay? That does not make sense to me. I mean, you need to draw a line in the sand somewhere and stop the repeat problem that we're having. I mean, I hate to say, I mean, if euthanasia rates are going up, I mean, we're sitting here trying to curb the population. These dogs are already going through. We are overly populated, not enough people to take care of these dogs. So what do we do with them? And how do we stop the future problem?
Great. And I think we all agree, and I know this is, regardless of whether we start today, the changes in the ordinance, or in the future, Larry's got good ideas to fix this and move forward. It's just a matter of whether it's today or a little bit down the line. Because this is, we're going to move forward towards that, whether it's the foster to adopt, internal or whatnot. They're definitely working on that. So it's just a matter of when. Because that needs to be done.
It's needed. What we do have a little bit of spay neuter funding set aside that we received from a deceased citizen. We could do a quick test on it, get a couple animals spay neutered, and see if there's interest in how much that animal costs.
How many repeat dogs or animals, cats, do you get back? Because you say you microchip them all, though, right, before going out. Is that a requirement?
We do. I'd say 10% of our re-intake are adopted animals from the shelter, and about another 5% are they got out of the house and they get reunited with their owner.
And then to piggyback on what I said before about an animal going out and possibly having more come back, have you seen that? Like, do you see animals that go out and those same people are like, oh, listen, we've got kittens or we've got puppies now, here you go?
In my time at the shelter since March, I've seen a few, but not a lot. Most of our problem is I've got 10 stray female cats on my property and there's 50 kittens with them. And that's the thing that we're trying to do now is control that population by trapping, but yet again, we're limited with the space that we can have in the shelter to hold those animals for 72 hours before we either humanely euthanize or we have a rescue come and pick them up, or an adopter.
With those 50 animals on one property, and trying not to be insensitive here, I mean, how do you stop that problem from continuing with those 50 turning into 250? You know, you don't have that many people that are going to adopt these animals, okay? So, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but the euthanasia rate is going to go up regardless. If we sit here and don't do anything, it's going to go up. And soon we're going to have 50 animals per every human, if we don't already have that now. So.
Well, and I think, for me, from a standpoint of the things that I've listened to, I think whether we want to include spade and neutering, if that's not a decision, the foster program, I think, does provide us a potential for some relief. Mm-hmm. And we start down that road until the new facility is decided upon and we start taking action as it relates to the capacity that that's going to create, which will allow us to draw a harder line with regards to spade and neutering. The foster program would also give us an indication of how many individuals are willing to spend the additional dollars that relate to a spade and neutering program. I think that would gauge the desire of the public to pay a higher amount and see what happens as it relates to adoptions at the higher rate versus the lower rate, which would give us an indication of what to expect if we required spade and neutering and the impact that might cause.
And I agree with Mr. Trout that they would be forced to enjoy the program more because a spay and neuter is not going to happen immediately once they foster it. It's usually a 30-day process. You have an animal that somebody likes 30 days in the home, they fall in love with it, and they're more likely to follow through with everything and want to pay that price.
Understood. Yep. Nice.
No, let's not forget, legally, we can get the animal back. So,
So if it's not being treated appropriately, we were able to proceed.
If they're not compliant.
Right.
If they fail to go through with the spay or neuter, which we understand things happen, and if that's the case and it's something truly we find that really to happen, we'll reschedule. But if they just neglect to do it, we can tell them to bring us the animal, or we go and get the animal because it's legally our property that's just being housed off-site.
Is there any county that's requiring residents to spay and neuter after they?
Yeah, we have.
I believe there are some ordinances out there. It's not everywhere, but I know, and I just noticed some of the comments we received. Cumberland County I know is one that does require, but again, Cumberland County has one of the most strict ordinances in the state.
Yeah.
And they have an internal vet.
And they have an internal vet. So.
How much additional staff would you have to follow up on all of those?
With the fostering?
Probably one part-time, or depending on how we structure it, because we just received an admin position, it just depends. I could maybe assign some duties to a couple of the shelter attendants now to follow up with, but for us, the easiest way is to receive the invoice from the veterinarian. We'll know who has been done. We look at that invoice and then, oh, this person didn't go. We know their schedule. Let's give them a call, see what happens.
Yeah.
Would it be, would
I
it,
think we can do that part. As long as the program doesn't get too large,
Yeah.
it can be managed with current staff, just from a spreadsheet standpoint.
I mean, would a possible option be for us to have an in-house vet? I mean, would that be a cheaper alternative? I mean, instead of $200,000 to $400,000 for this program.
The shelters that I've experienced in the past, especially when I was in Topeka, which was a population of 135,000, so you look at it similar. They had internal staff. They also had the additional ability of, they had Kansas State University veterinarians in training that would come and do those types of procedures, and so it was a nice partnership. But they also had their own internal vets, so that reduced the costs and allowed it to make it happen in a lot better way. But we get our new facility, which will have a location that would allow people to be able to come in and do that, that would reduce our costs dramatically. They could be scheduled, the veterinarian would come, do a number of procedures within the day, and it would reduce the amount of staffing we need to run them all over the place to take them to other vets. So it could be a potential, even if we didn't have a full-time staff, we contract with the vet to come to our facility and do those procedures. That would reduce our costs and staffing requirements as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to be able to advance this once we have the new facility.
It's interesting that you mentioned K-State, because we're, 25 miles from NC State Veterinary School, which is one of the premier veterinary schools in the Southeast.
Correct.
Have we talked to them at all?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we currently partner with them. We
Okay.
transport up there. We have a couple of volunteers do it. They do roughly 6 to 8 spare neuters a week for us. And then we also have a partnership with Second Chance Rescue. They're going to do 10 cats on average, every other week for us.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's a good conversation to have to see if we have a facility, would they be willing to come down to assist?
I think might ought to discuss, if they don't want to voluntarily come down, discuss what would it take
Yes, we can make an arrangement with them.
to enter into some kind of an agreement with them. What's the wishes of the board on concerning this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I like the idea of the fostering program. I think that sounds very interesting and maybe our best plan to me.
As a current plan, that would be, okay, I still would like to discuss avenues of possibly getting an internal vet in the future to see exactly if that's going to be beneficial for us. I mean, there's no pun intended, more ways to one way to skin a cat. I mean, we can go ahead and start looking at a bunch of other options and stuff here. I mean, there are resources for us, and we obviously see the problem. I mean, I just hate to keep shooting ourselves in the foot. That makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, and if you want to kind of see how this kind of thing goes, the recommendation would be obviously leave the ordinance as is. It's not a requirement, but kind of let Larry do what he can with it,
Okay.
and then see how it goes. And in future plans, then we'd make it an absolute requirement, regardless all adoption have to be spay and neuter.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to suggest. That
Be fine.
we
Yeah,
move
my
forward with
recommendation,
it.
excuse me, Chairman, what I would say is prior to the approval of the ordinance, you could do a motion to create a fostering program, get that on the books, and get that as a motion, and then do a motion to approve the ordinance as presented. That way you get, you would have that instruction to us as it relates to establishing the foster program, and then go ahead and approve the ordinance. That way you're voting knowing that you've instructed us to start that program and get that in place with the concept that you're going to go ahead and approve the ordinance with the spade, with not requiring spade and neuter. And that way the instruction's been given, we can go ahead and approve the ordinance, and then staff can begin to work on the foster program.
I like that option.
I would be willing to go along with that. I think that would provide a good bridge through this time until we decide exactly what direction we need to take with the new shelter, renovations, whatever it may be.
So we'll put two things on the agenda for your approval,
Okay,
if that's agreeable to you all.
yeah. Do we need to add them as separate line items on the
Yes.
agenda? Okay.
And this doesn't require a public hearing or anything. Again, we've already had the public input session on this.
I like that, solution simply because, it gives us time to outline and, investigate the right way to do this. I don't want us to just jump up and make a decision and later on regret that we made this decision. We want to do the right thing. So, with Brent's input with you all, Larry,
Yes, ma'am.
I think that you all can come up with a reliable plan for us to be able to consider the vote on.
Yes, ma'am. I will.
I have a question, and this
Yes,
goes back to a comment earlier in our discussion. When we euthanize an animal, do we have the ability to cremate? Or
We do
just?
not.
What would it cost to get that ability? I mean, when I heard you say we'd make a trip to the landfill, that just, I'm sorry.
I'm unaware of what it would cost for a professional crematorium. I can get with Courtney at the city of Dunn. I know they have one that law enforcement and that she uses as well. I can maybe get a ballpark figure and go from there.
Or maybe we could have an agreement with Dunn, since they have one already, to,
Yes, we can investigate, you bet.
yeah, yeah.
Look at our alternative.
That's, I mean, that's just sounds more humane than going to the landfill.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Of all the number of animals that are euthanized every 30 days, how many of those would be sick and injured and would have to be euthanized anyway?
The majority of our euthanized animals are sick, injured, or they have bitten somebody. We rarely euthanize an adoptable animal right now, like at this current time.
75%?
75-80% sick, injured, bite. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Is that where you're getting your 20% euthanasia rates from then?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then, so it's not even unadopted animals?
It's
then?
not adopted animals
Okay.
yet. It has happened in the past, but with the increased cost, adoptable animals will be euthanized.
So we're not putting down animals because of being overcrowded and not being adopted then?
Not
Correct.
as of right now.
And I think that's when we do the clear shelter.
Yeah, that's why we asked Mr. Trout for clear the shelters so we can reduce the euthanasia rate. So if I get 4 or 5 empty kennels because of that, we're safe. I have 4 or 5 empty bike kennels in the back because that's our priority for law enforcement, things like that.
I got another question. How much did you say it cost to neuter a dog?
Let's see here. Look back here. About $165 is the average from the surrounding vets.
And is that all sizes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, I just want to make a comment, just when you get ready to have the veterinarians or assistants from NC State perform these operations on cats or dogs, is there a possibility of calling around to all the vets we've got in this area and ask for volunteers?
We surely can. Yes, sir.
Probably some of them would be glad to help out and save right much money, I think, over time.
Yeah, we can ask, and I can partner with some of our rescues as well and see, because some of them have internal veterinarians, to see if they'd be willing to help us out.
Okay, if you would do that, I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir. I will.
All right, hearing nothing else, we'll move on to, thank y'all for your presentation and the information. All right, Mr. Ward.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have two items to present. The first is some cabinets that we need replacing at a couple of our labs. One is the water treatment plant here in Lillington and also the North Harnett wastewater treatment plant. The cabinetry we have in the lab's getting pretty old and needed repair, so we actually budgeted for that in our operating budget under maintenance and repair, but because the cost for informal quotes that we received exceeded the state's statutory threshold for formal bidding, we had to do a formal bid. We did that. I don't think it helped the pricing very much at all. In fact, the same person that we got, or the company that we got the quotes from back in the spring for the operating budget, won the bid as the low bidder. But anyway, we're here to comply with that. So that requires the board to approve that bid going forward. The cost is $169,859. And again, these funds have been budgeted for moving forward. So just need your approval on that if that's acceptable. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Anyone have any objections to moving forward on this bid? All right, we will add that to the consent agenda for Monday then.
Thank you. Second item is requesting the board's approval to award a construction contract to ELJ Incorporated from Jacksonville to install a water line along Highway 42, Betts Road and Wagstaff Road and Rollins Road to get back to the Northwest Harnett elementary school that's being constructed right now. So there's two parts to the construction. This is the water line bid. There'll also be a pump station and wastewater line to be bid as well. That'll come a little later, but this is the first part of that. We received 4 bids, about $320,000 between the low and the high bid. So we were actually pretty surprised and happy overall with the bidding. There's been some crazy bidding prices that have been received since the pandemic. So this was actually kind of encouraging. Our consulting engineer, LKC out of Aberdeen has supervised work before from ELJ. And so they've given them a good recommendation. Should be a pretty straightforward project. It's just a water line in DOT right-of-way to get back to the school. So they should be able to get started pretty quick, and hopefully, if we get good weather, 6 months, the water line will be installed. So that's there for your approval. There's a certified bid tab as well, showing the results that were received on the 13th of September. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question. How far are we along with this Northwest Harnett school? Do you know?
Excuse me?
How far are we along with this Northwest Harnett school?
It's certainly
We've been building on it for years.
It's certainly moving quite along. Commissioner Matthews may have a better update than I do, but I've ridden by there several times in the last couple of months, and it is progressing. A lot of the most of the site work, I think, is probably close to being complete, and it's moving right along.
Right. Yeah, it's progressing very well. Thankfully, we've got a project that's moving along as it should. And I think probably, of course, I've been out of town last week, but I think all the roof work has been completed this time, so it should be dried in and start moving pretty quickly.
Do you have a timeline to when everything is completed?
Yeah, well, we plan to open for the new school year next year.
Oh, really? Okay, sounds good.
Any further discussion on this bid approval? If not, we'll add that to the consent agenda for approval on Monday.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's talk about bids or people that want to serve on committees? I think everybody has it in their packet. We have a number of tentative approvals.
Mr. Chairman, I would, since the Board of Adjustment representative from District 3 is first on that list, I will just share that I have talked with Mr. Summers. I am well satisfied that he would do a good job with that board, and I support his appointment to that board.
Ms. McCoy, you have any feelings about Mr. Tony?
Not really, because there were two applications submitted for that position for District 1. And I read both his applications as well as hers. Dr. Rosa Smith Williams, I recommend her because she's very active in the community. She's well educated, and I just feel that, and I don't have anything against this Mr. Marvin, but I just think that she would be better candidate for that position.
Where's the
Application for that.
application?
I think maybe Jamie sent that out, so I'll have to get that and forward it to you guys while I was on vacation, so
But
I
it-
apologize.
But if you're good with that application, we will add that to the approval.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And what was her name again?
Dr. Rosa Williams Smith.
Anyone object to adding that before we get the application? All right. What about Ms. Mangum, Commissioner Johnson?
I have no problem at all with Ms. Mangum. I'm good with her.
Okay. All right. So we will add these for approval. So, the Board of Equalization and Review, I think we're going to wait until after there's no outstanding appeals. Is that correct?
Well, let me just say, Mr. Chairman, I've talked to Mr. Jackson. I have no reservations with him being appointed to that position. I understand there is some concern because of a pending appeal that be delayed. But as far as I'm concerned, I have no issue with his nomination.
So once we get the appeals out of the way, we'll just add him. It'll just be a matter of approving him.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us next to the Jetport Committee. We have an application from Mr. Roger Farina. I fully support his application as well and recommend it be placed on the Jetport Committee.
Okay. And likewise for Mr. Benjamin Slaughter for District 4. Actually, Mr. Slaughter will be an at-large member. Jimmy Johnson is the District 4.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right, the Jury Commission. We have 2 applicants from District 2 and 1 from District 5, and we only have 1 vacancy.
I would actually like to recommend Arkita McCrimmon for that position from District 5. She's very extensive in her background with the criminal justice field, and I think she would be good fit for that board.
I could support that. I know her. Good.
Do we don't have a district requirement or anything like
No.
that
No,
for the
sir.
jury commission? Okay. You good with that, Commissioner Johnson?
Well, I haven't talked to Victoria Green, but I have talked to Cassandra Jackson, and I feel the same way about her because I have talked to her extensively about this and very impressed with her.
You want to have them come in and they could duel it out? That's fine.
Yeah.
With me.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes,
would
ma'am.
like to give the correct name for Mrs. Rosa Williams. Her name is Mrs. Rosa Smith Williams, Dr. Rosa Smith Williams.
Okay, thank you.
I got it from Jamie Dale.
All right, well, we've got, which one was it you were recommending, Mr. Johnson?
Cassandra Brett Jackson.
Since this is not a voting meeting, what's the procedure for this?
You put, at your next voting meeting, you can just put all candidates up and take a vote.
We could do
I'll
that.
open the floor for nominations and take a vote.
Open the floor for nominations and then we can vote on it here for adding to the agenda for Monday, right?
Yeah, you're voting on this at your next meeting since this is a work session.
Okay, well, we've got two nominations. We've got Marquita McCrimmon and Cassandra Britt Jackson. Do I hear a second on these two nominations?
I mean, I second the two nominations.
I'll second them.
Yeah, I'll second the nominations.
I was just trying to study what we are doing here, but I second it.
Okay, all right, we've got a motion and a second on these two nominations. So I guess the only thing to do is to take a vote on,
Are you voting to put these two candidates up for voting?
for approval on Monday, right? Okay.
So on Monday, we will make a decision between the two.
Yeah, we'll make a decision as to which one we're going to put up for approval on Monday. We're going to make that decision now. Unless you want to wait and
I would
study.
prefer to wait till Monday and take nominations
Okay.
and vote at that time. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay, we've got the nominations in the second. So we will just add this as a separate line item to the agenda on Monday and vote on who's going to fill the position.
Thank you.
Okay.
Question? All the other recommendations,
The-
we've already voted on them, so.
The other nominations will go on the consent agenda for
Consent
Monday.
agenda, that's
Yes,
what I'm
ma'am.
asking.
But you're making it clear, Mr. Chairman, on Monday night, you will consider nominations from the floor for any one of these three candidates. Is that correct, or just two candidates?
We already have the nomination. We've got two candidates nominated right now. So what we have to do Monday night is vote on these two candidates. Is that correct?
Yeah,
No,
because only one
I thought
slot.
based on Commissioner Matthews' situation, his suggestion was that since it's not a voting meeting, that you just do all your voting on Monday.
Right, but we had the nomination today.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, might be appropriate to have the two folks who recommended these two to just put them in a formal nomination on Monday
On
night.
Monday, I'm good with that. Okay. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So that's the way we'll handle that Monday. All right. That takes care of that. All right, county manager's report.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I have today is I want to introduce Mike Morrow, Mike, if you could stand up. Mike has now joined our team and is getting engaged with the projects that he's assigned, departments that he's assigned as Assistant County Manager, and really happy to have him on board. Brings a wealth of experience and looking forward now to be fully staffed. I have submitted a new organizational structure which puts some departments underneath me that weren't and redistributes the departments that each of the assistant county managers report. Mike will also be helping with some special projects, the management excellence program that we're working with the School of Government on. He will be helping to spearhead that in order to move that through the process, which is our next step that we looked at related to our strategic plan. And so excited to have him on board and have things moving forward.
Well, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Do you have another announcement?
Huh?
Have another announcement?
I can make it if you'd like, Chair. I sent an email to each of you today on another staff member that we have made an appointment on, and that is that I have hired Natalie Presser to be our Jetport Director. She is been our airport manager and been filling in ever since the county took over and running of the airport. She has a lot of passion for this job. She wants to see this airport grow and work forward, and so I'm excited to hire and bring her on now as the director. Additional staffing decisions will need to be made out there. She's been kind of running a little bit short-staffed. We know that we need to hire some additional help for her, but I'm going to be working with her to determine exactly what that looks like. But I think, we have in the budget for 3 full-time positions out there, and we have 1 currently with her. So there'll be 2 positions. We just have to figure out which 2 positions are going to make it the best set up for her in order to be successful. So we're working on that, but I'm excited to have her coming on board in the new role that she has. Just more responsibility, and I think she's ready for it.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Before we adjourn, is there a way to get a photograph put up on the screens here?
Yes, sir. We can. If Melissa wants to pull up something, I can cast it off.
Can you put this photo up?
Can you email it to Melissa and she can put it up on the screen for you? That'll probably be the best way to do it.
Yeah, because you're logged in, right? For yourself.
I can log
You have your email. Open up your
the
email.
easiest way, if you want to go to mobile.harnett.org and you can sign in your email there.
Trying to see how to send it on my harnett.org email account. If I
Does that need to be handicapped?
Yeah,
Okay.
if I text it to you, would that work?
she could then email it
Yes,
to
and
herself.
then I can email it to myself.
Okay. I'll text it to you. Okay, it should have it. This photograph is recognizing a Harnett County business that is involved in the cleanup and recovery from Hurricane Ian
Oh.
down in South Florida. I think when we have companies that are doing something like this, I think it's worth recognize. go. Can you blow that up any?
I'm trying. Maybe I need to send it a different way. Can I download this? I'm sorry.
What you're seeing here is a barge with some porta potties and vehicles from Forever Clean, which is located here in Harnett County out on 401. That barge and that barge is headed for Sanibel Island.
Oh.
It's not headed out of the country. Somebody asked me last night, they said, so they're headed to another country? I said, no, they're headed to Sanibel Island. May look like another country right now, but they're going to Sanibel Island. There we go. I just thought that was pretty neat that the company from Harnett County's down there, integral part. They've been down there since before the hurricane. They went down to, and when Duke Energy started staging in preparation for the hurricane, they were there. And I don't know when they'll be home. It's going to be quite a while before they get home.
That's great.
All right. Nothing else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. We're slow.